This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in edtech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hello, everyone. My name's Ladek, and my guest for today is Alex Ryan. She's the CEO and Solution Strategist at Evolve Solutions Group. For 20 years now, she has been defining and developing processes, culture, technology, change, and training development and management programs for Fortune 100 organizations. In this very delicious conversation, Alex and I talk about how Alex defines microlearning and gamification. Alex then explains gamification and how to apply it to the learning process with different industries and with different challenges. We then move on to talking about options for integrating virtual reality with a learning management solution. And this is a great conversation around her application of something called Taco Builder, which is a hugely popular gamification application that she built for another organization. And it's related to Hamburger Builder and many other things. You should really check that out. Next, Alex explains the importance of organizational flexibility when it comes to implementing learning so that change and adaptation can happen more rapidly. And then finally, we tie our conversation off like we normally do, but Alex talking about the future of gamification and the adoption of tools like ChatGPT in learning design. And remember, we record this podcast live so that we can interact with you, our listeners, in real time. So if you'd like to join the fun every week on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, just come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe. Now, I give you Alex Ryan. Like we know what we're doing. I love it. That's so fantastic. You know, I got to say, I like the little intro. It makes me feel good every time I hear that music.
I like it too. I was just kind of doing a little dance.
I actually saw you do the dance in the background there, and I was like, yes.
I was getting ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ladek. I am from OpenLMS, and today my guest is Alex Ryan, who is the Chief Solution Strategist. Mm-hmm. Nice, I got it right. Yes, at Evolve Solutions Group, which I'm going to say it again, Evolve Solutions Group. You've been producing what? I don't know. How long have you been producing solutions in all kinds of different areas for clients? How long has Evolve been around? Evolve Solutions.
So Evolve's been around for about 5 years, but we were actually previously a part of a larger company for 15 years before that. So we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Just about 20 years now.
Does that mean it's a spin-off? Did you take it out? Did you go solo? What did you do?
We spun off, divested, took the services division from that other company and spun it off because we were really hyper-focused on blended learning, change management, all things learning and change, and they were just going in a different direction. It was a product company, so it made sense.
Very cool. We're going to talk about tacos today.
Tacos.
And I just want to put that out there because that was on the banner, and it's going to be how I'm going to promote this podcast to everyone. And I live in Mexico, so I eat tacos literally like 7 times a week, which is fantastic.
Tacos are fantastic.
Before we do that, before we talk about tacos and why that's important to learning, give us the 60 seconds on who Alex is. Where'd you come from? Like, what do you focus on? What's your expertise? Why is learning important to you?
All right, big question. So as I mentioned, we've been doing this as part of Evolve or our former company for about 20 years now. But prior to that, I was Big Six Consulting. I worked in learning and change, documentation, technical writing. I actually got my start in engineering and decided I wanted to be more people facing. And so kind of, found that path into training, realized that they pay people to train people, and I loved it. So it's always kind of been my passion. I remember back in the days where something like this where we're streaming out to the world was like not even a reality. You had big production crews doing distance learning and TVs in other locations. So I remember those days well. And ever since I found my way into training and organizational change, I've just been passionate about training at the point of need, hitting that learner where they need it, giving them the tools, the resources to build skills, also change their mindset about learning new skills and how that really grows the organization and adds to your learning culture. And so now, as part of Evolve and also our previous company, we've been doing custom blended learning solutions, which includes e-learning, microlearning, that bad word. Not everybody loves microlearning, but it's a word. Simulation, gamification, stop motion animation, performance management, just-in-time resources, everything from instructor-led, virtual instructor-led to synchronous and asynchronous. So most of the work that we do, and I shouldn't just say me, because I've got a fantastic team behind me of very, very skilled resources that make me look good. But we really just get excited about all topics, all industries, all areas, not just tacos, where we can help them transform their training function and also help them find that right modality for changing mindsets and building skill sets.
Super cool. That was great. Is microlearning really, is it a bad word? Is that,
well,
because the guest, literally the one right before you last week, was like the entire show was about conversational microlearning, right? How do you create conversations around very discrete packets of
those
learning.
Tiny little tidbits of information. The only reason why I bring that up is because if you think back a couple of months ago, and those that follow the instructional design and e-learning industry know that somebody tried to trademark, I think, microlearning as a word. And I know that in working with my clients, when they say we want micro learning, and then they say, but it's a 10-minute module. I'm like, well, that's not really micro learning. So micro learning is, tends to be a bit shorter and typically different modalities. And so I just think it's not a bad word. It's just a misinterpreted word, I think. Mm-hmm. It's a buzzword that people want to throw out there, but sometimes is misinterpreted. It's
definitely a buzzword, and I'll be interested to see how we circle back to it, based on the gamification / simulation conversation we're going to have. But I think it's maybe a reaction as well to learning professionals to the TikTok universe that we're in now.
Yes.
Right. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I feel like there's this gut reaction to, no, darn it. There's a lot of great long form. There's a lot of great masterclass. There's a lot of great, you have to go through the process.
Exactly.
Which I 1,000,000% believe in. TikTok does not teach us everything, right? We can't rely on it, but it's been effective for a lot of things.
Nor does long form teach us everything, nor does one simulation. Is it going to teach you? We'll talk about that. One simulation or gamification isn't going to get you there. It does need to be a part of kind of a broader learning strategy. And I think the biggest piece is just hitting the right tone for the objective. So if you're just trying to give them one task or one skill, or showing them how to use something in Excel, for example, and they just need to get in and get out, microlearning is fantastic, but it's not going to teach you everything about Excel. And sometimes it gets tedious going from video to video to video to video, or minor, micro article to micro article. So anyway, we're getting off topic.
Hi there. I'm sorry to break into the show right now, but if you're enjoying this show, if you are challenged, if you're inspired, if you're learning something, if you think that you're going to be able to get something out of this to put into your practice, do me a quick favor. Pause right now and just hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. It doesn't matter which one, just hit subscribe, because that way it'll make sure that you never miss an episode in the future. Thanks. Now back to the show.
Sorry.
No, we're not. No. Let's bring us back. Again, coming back to tacos, I'm putting in the comments here for everyone right now. There is actually a case study on the Evolve Solutions Group website right now for the Taco Builder. If you want to check it out, I encourage you to go over there. The reason why I thought it was cool is because you and I actually connected. You were giving a presentation at DevLearn last year around gamification. Taco Builder was the thing that comes up because it's so delicious. It's so tantalizing. And everybody wants to be a part of it. Just give us like literally like 30 seconds on what it is, and then we'll move into why gamification, what it is, and what your recommendations are around that.
Yes. So Taco Builder, in a nutshell, is a mostly gamification, but a little bit of simulation. So it really bridges the gap. It kind of walks the line there, that allows just-in-time practice for new hires all the way through tenured team members who are in a restaurant learning how to make the recipe. So they can get in and spend as little as 5 minutes or as long as an hour, literally building out tacos according to the restaurant specifications for the recipe. They get immediate feedback on whether they've chosen the right ingredients and in the right order, and they can come back as many times as they need to. And what the biggest kind of purpose and why we even did Taco Builder was that the restaurants were wasting a ton of ingredients and manager time and high cost to actually take people physically through the recipes from start to finish right on their first day or first week at the job. So what they decided to do was build a gamification that takes them through the recipes after they've reviewed the recipe book. So again, part of a blended learning strategy. So they've looked through the recipe cards, looked through the recipe book. They then sit down and can learn the recipes. And then that manager time and the food cost and potential food waste can be spent on observing and validating that they have the recipes down.
And it is now for people who are going to ask, is this a VR application or is this on a laptop, a tablet? How does it get delivered?
Built totally in Storyline, SCORM packaged, available on an LMS.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That the move to the VR is so important, or so big these days that I could see how a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. And we've already started kind of thinking through how a VR solution would work for something like this. Of course, it would be relatively straightforward to do. The big issues, especially in the hospitality and food service industry, is the costs associated with that. And the biggest issue is that recipes change all the time. And you have new recipes or limited time offers that pop in. So we wanted to make it easy to update and maintain without a high cost, because margins are super slim in the restaurant industry.
Makes sense. Now my mind is totally bubbling about how do you create a generic solution that then you can like just drag and drop, what you need into it for the day. Anyway, we don't have to go down.
Which we did. And we can talk about that if we have time. We did create kind of a shell solution.
Oh, cool. Pun intended. Pun intended.
Shell solution. They only use soft tacos in Taco Builder. Darn it. But the structure, the triggers, the actions, the motions, depending on what type of environment you're working in, can absolutely be templatized in the sense that we're already working on an automotive version where they're changing the oil, checking air pressure in tires, also checking fluids, all things that are task-based that need to be done in a certain order and with specific items. So this type of gamification and simulation absolutely can be templatized. It's just a matter of reshelling, pun intended, reshelling the environment and getting the right images and the right movements. And also if it's a more physical task, as opposed to just putting an ingredient onto a taco, we can include things like video snippets.
Sure. Do you want the pesto spinach wrap or the tomato basil? Anyway, no. So this is you worked with. Remind me, it's rustic taco,
Rusty Taco.
Okay, yes. Rusty Taco, and
which are like Midwest, Southwest based.
Okay.
Yes.
When you went to them or they came to you, this is a great intro to that. And they said, we want to build something. Was the immediate response from Evolve Solutions Group, let's build this kind of gamification sim, or how did you walk through that process and then ultimately get to the decision that gamification was the right learning initiative for this?
So I'll tell you a quick story of how it came about with Rusty Taco, but then we'll get to the decision making. So Rusty Taco at the time was a part of Inspire Brands, which is a large restaurant group. And they had seen from one of their sister companies a sandwich builder. And the sandwich builder was very similar to Taco Builder. It was pulling down ingredients in the right order, showing you placement, all of those things, and then it showed you the finished sandwich. So they had seen that and said, yes, we want that. And I said, okay, totally makes sense. We can do this with tacos. We did it with sandwiches. And then, of course, for another sister brand of theirs, we did them with burgers. And so we said, yes, but let's talk about your broader learning strategy, and what you're hoping to accomplish. Because when they came to us, they said, oh, and by the way, can we get a game sim, for tacos, because we saw the sandwich builder.
This is the throwaway fun thing. There's all these other things we want to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Like there's a lot that we need to do. And oh, by the way, if budget permits, we'd love to do this game sim and do it for tacos. And of course, we all got excited, and I'm literally getting hungry because I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about tacos. I love tacos. So really, the idea came from one of their sister brands and what we had already done for them. So that's where the ideation came from. Now, in terms of making the decision of the structure and whether it was more of a simulation or a gamification and which way we went with that, really had more to do with their broader learning strategy. So they had already been doing some RISE courses. They already had a video library for building certain recipes, but that was more on the back end, like the prep building and recipes, not so much the actual physical tacos. They were completely revamping their training program. They were trying to reduce the training time. I think they started at about 6 weeks for their most senior role. They wanted to bring that down to 2 weeks. High attrition in the restaurant industry, trying to reduce down their training time and also increase engagement. Then, of course, there was the costs associated with training. So when we got in there, we saw that we needed to do truly a multimodal training program for them. So they had RISE, they had video libraries, but now we built out new Train the Trainer guides. We built out physical and digital recipe cards, literally, that would be on the wall and could also be accessed from a tablet or a mobile device. We also built out a more structured video library. So prior, it was just literally videos, no titling or anything like that. We added in titling, steps on the screen, things of that nature. So yet again, another modality for them to work from. And then we said, okay, so if you have a brand new person coming in, you sit them down to some long form e-learning or some RISE courses. Then you take them through specific roles and physical on the job training, and then bring them into going through the recipe cards, even being shoulder to shoulder as people are starting to build through recipes as they actually fulfill orders. Then you sit them down to this simulation and have them actually do it themselves. And it wasn't just, point and click. It was literally muscle memory that we were trying to build, and repetition of certain recipes, especially the more complex ones, because they had 36, I believe, recipe items, a lot to learn for somebody that's going to be on the line. Another key thing within Rusty Taco was that no role was a silo. Everyone cross-trained on everything except for bartender, which they also serve margaritas, by the way. Very good.
It only gets better. It only gets better.
It only gets better. So because they wanted to have everyone cross-trained, they felt that this was the best way to reduce time, reduce manager impact and manager overhead, but also reduce that the food costs associated with it, but also bring them more into the fold right from the start. So moral of the story was they had already seen a version of what Taco Builder would be. We just had to see where it would fit in the overall learning strategy. And now they've also incorporated this not only into new hire training, but remediation. So if people are making mistakes on the line, which was a big thing that they were having trouble with, they just didn't know the recipes, making mistakes, again, food waste. delays in getting customer orders out. So then they brought them back in and said, hey, you know what? Go spend 15 minutes in Taco Builder and, refresh your memory on XYZ recipes, and then come back and let's have a fresh start, so to speak.
So what did you what's the question I'm asking?
Yeah.
When you were talking with Rusty Taco about this and with any other client, was there ever a moment when you're like, I don't think gamification is going to be right here? Like this, this isn't a skill that we're trying to build that makes sense, or this, you're trying to do a mindset shift rather than like, what do you do in those situations kind of off the bat when you're asking to determine whether or not gamification is right for your learning initiative?
So that's a great question, and I will answer it with a bit of a case study from another client. So, because we always felt that in a restaurant environment or in automotive or manufacturing or working on a line, any task-based activity works really well for gamification. Anything that has a prescribed order or a process and things need to be done in a certain order using specific ingredients, items, parts, what have you, is really ideal for gamification, especially with younger audiences and millennials and those that are into gamification and are gamers. It does tend to engage them because they do feel like they're playing a game. But we have had multiple situations, and one in particular, where they've said, I want a game. And I said, okay, but what are you trying to accomplish with that game? Well, everybody else has a game. Yeah, that's not the answer to the question, because you're right. If you are doing a mindset shift, is a game the right thing? I don't know. It depends on, is gamification only right for task-based activities? No, that's not the case. Could you do it for a mindset shift or building skills and mindset shifting? Yes, you can. But if all you're trying to do is put in a game for game's sake and say, yep, I've got my game, then that's not really the best way to go about doing it. So this one situation was a manufacturing and distribution company. They were redoing their sales training department, and part of their sales reps was actually going into stores and working on displays and going to the grocery store, setting up displays, things like that, getting shelf space, which getting shelf space in grocery stores is ridiculously challenging. And so it was both a skill building, but also a sales process and following their sales process. And they said, we want Taco Builder for sales. And I said, okay, so give me more on that. What are you, is there a very specific process? Is there well, yes, we've got our sales methodology. Okay, check, we've got a process. Is there, very specific tasks and activities that need to be done in a specific order? Well, no, not really, because it really depends on whether you're going to a grocery store or a convenience store or a gas station. Okay, so there's a lot of variability. Okay, so is it something that you can replicate over and over again and that people are making mistakes in that task or activity? Well, they're making mistakes with how they talk to customers, or they're not using the right words, or they're not building rapport, or they're not, following up like they should. And I said, okay, so I hear what you need, which is not gamification. It's definitely more simulation in the sense of, maybe even branching scenarios in that simulation. So you're presented with a situation, you're in a store environment, you are presented with something that a customer might say, and there are some tools we've been using to do some stuff like that. Then you need to respond appropriately as a result of it. Okay, so now you've done your in-store activity. Let's talk about your follow-up. Okay, so then you get another branching activity or simulation that says, what do you do next? Depending on what you choose, etc. And they were just so tied to wanting a Taco Builder for sales. And yeah, and they just, I said, if you wanted to do a game around the sales cycle, the sales methodology, we can certainly do that. Is that going to get you to where you need to go? Is that going to give them the skills practice that they need? Probably not.
Right.
So we need to have those conversations about what they're trying to accomplish, what their learning outcomes are, and also what problems are they trying to solve for.
How,
Because
and what you've just described as well is, where does the learning fit in terms of the broader
yeah,
scope of what either the staff person or the
mhm, or the
the
manager,
learner, yeah, the
or
manager, yeah, the learner.
mhm,
So how, talk to me about that for a while, like where, when talking again gamification specifically, but how important is it? You said, like, you kind of gave them a solution, say, hey, look,
mhm,
we could do something around the sales cycle
mhm.
as a part of a broader package.
Yes.
What, how can I think about that if I'm a learning director, if I am a
Mhm,
chief learning officer? What do you
mhm.
usually counsel around mixing it up and breaking it up
Yeah.
and doing different things?
So, number one thing I say, it is not a standalone activity.
Mm.
Gamification should never be, or simulation for that matter, should never be a standalone activity. One of the things that we've seen very clearly with that is that we did have one client that put a game in front of people almost as like an assessment of their
Hmm.
skills. And we wound up seeing learners really frustrated, as because they didn't have the knowledge, the information to actually effectively participate in the game. And so it definitely cannot be a standalone, or definitely not a pre-assessment of some sort or an assessment of skills. We do like to see games as more capstone, or as part, a bit into the process, especially if you have a 2, 3, 6 week, learning process or learning path. Gamification should probably not be any earlier than maybe a midpoint or later, in the sense of you need to give them the baseline information. You need
Hmm.
to provide them with the building blocks that gets them to that effective gamification engagement. So we like to look at what other things are you providing them to prep them to be a part of the gamification activity. And so it's really looking at what they're already providing, and also what is their follow up. Because I think people think, all right, well, the game is going to be, or gamification is going to be our capstone, and then we're done training. But as we all know, as training professionals and learning and development professionals, the learning does not end at the end of the learning object. There needs to be some sort of feedback, coaching, especially in gamification. There needs to be some real time observation and interaction with that learner to make sure that they're carrying it through into their job.
Mm. I would, when you first started this out, I love the arc of your answer, but I have to admit, when I first started out, has gamification ever been used as that first filter, let's just say, for candidates, or maybe people who want to move into a different, like from a technical to a management path or something like that,
Mhm.
where it's like, look, we're going to give you this game
Mhm.
to play or the scenario, and that's kind of, I don't want to say sneaky, but that's just one of the ways they use to say, look, if you don't get this, then you're probably not a good candidate. Have you ever seen it used that way?
I've seen people try, not effectively.
Oh, okay. No, no, I'm just wondering. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, we have one client that we are starting to talk about some simulation and gamification as part of their training transformation. And it's a 3 year program. It's an apprenticeship type program. And so we are currently, they use a very comprehensive assessment exam
Mhm.
as a phase gate before people are even, coming into their first year. We are starting to think about and look at ways that we could gamify some of the assessments, some of the portions of the assessment,
Mhm.
because their typical new hire in this role are gamers, and
Right.
do tend to
Mhm.
be kind of that multimodal, type learner. So we are, excuse me, looking at ways that we can maybe break down some of the components of the assessment into more of a gamification type environment, and even a simulation, even going so far as to give them simulation snippets or troubleshooting snippets in the applications they're going to be working in to see how they do.
Mm-hmm.
So again, not a standalone, but really in combination with other modalities such as quizzes, exams, and whatnot. So as long as it's paired together with another modality, I think it can be effective, but only on its own. I don't think it's fair. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, no. Have we entered a time where the use of games and even the term gamification is it just accepted by all your clients? There was a time not so long ago when we don't want a game because that's what, that it doesn't fit our culture, or that's not serious enough, or that doesn't teach. Has the gaming industry officially sort of moved, just like hip hop came in, it's not, they just celebrated in the Grammys, right?
Mhm.
The 50th anniversary of hip hop being accepted in
50 years of hip hop.
50.
I'm old. Anyway, sorry.
And Beyonce has 32 Grammys. So it's like, have we arrived at a time now where that conversation it's not a doubt anymore. You're not selling it. It's more if and when this piece should be used.
I would say absolutely so. We crossed the chasm, in my opinion, probably about 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's no longer us in client consultation saying, have you thought about gamification? It's them saying, can we incorporate gamification into our blended learning? Sometimes they hear the cost and they're like, oh, maybe not. But for the most part, it is something that they're bringing up, and it's not something we have to sell. What we do have to do, and we have to be good stewards of the modality and say, yes, that is something we can talk about, but we need to make sure it's right for what you're trying to accomplish here.
Before I ask you my last question.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. Before I ask you my last question, I do have to give a shout out to Eric Prospero, who gave us a note here on LinkedIn asking about flautas. He was a guest on the show several weeks back. He's an animator.
No flautas at Rusty Taco. It's tacos only, but they do have breakfast tacos, specialty tacos, vegan options, and vegetarian. And they do have margaritas and cerveza. Beer.
So final question for you is, as someone who is building this, as someone who has one of the sexy, sort of case studies out there for gamification, what's the near term future look like? What are you excited about in terms of, is it more of the same, or is there new tech? Is it just becoming easier to build this? Are costs decreasing? Is there a new way to do it? And usually I ask, 12 to 18 months, right? Maybe creeping into 2024 a little bit. Like, what are you excited for in terms of this particular modality for learning?
Well, I would say there are so many more tools, and there's new tools coming out every day. Part of the reason why Taco Builder, I think, has been so popular and we've been able to replicate it across others, and of course its predecessor, Sandwich Builder, is because it's built in Storyline. It's a tool that can be published into SCORM, delivered on an LMS, or it can be, delivered even on an intranet. So it's definitely flexible. But I would say with all the tools that are coming out, especially with things like ChatGPT and
you said it first. Ha.
Yeah, I know. I knew it was going to come out. Who doesn't have anything right now and they don't mention it? I would say the costs, I do think, are going to go down. I think the timelines for development are going to reduce, but I just think that it's going to bring in so many more variables and elements, and we'll be able to move away from a set task in a set order with set ingredients and more into that variability, more into that kind of choose your own adventure type of thing. I think also because there are, the actual game companies out there are starting to bridge into this and, are not starting to, but already have a foothold in gamification, even for the learning space. And I think we're going to see a lot more collaborations between those traditional like game companies, like the companies that actually make, all the games that are out there, have them do a lot more partnerships with learning and development companies so that we have the true learning rigor and instructional design rigor and the learning outcomes combined with really cool graphics.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I'm excited for the folks that who own Unreal Engine or whatever to start really like flexing their muscle in that way, which they already have. I mean, they I think they focus on some deeper applications around engineering and those kinds of things, but to bring it to the consumer facing retail universe it's going to be an exciting time. I think my son will enjoy.
My kids love playing Taco Builder. They're like, "Can I play with Taco Builder?" I'm like, "Sure."
So then that wasn't my last question. Then I'm going to circle all the way back to the beginning and say, okay, your kids they want to play with Taco Builder, but they probably want to play with it for like 2 minutes. So take me back to microlearning. Does gamification fit into the microlearning universe? Is there the 30-second game? Is there the the tidbit that you can throw over the fence to employee and say, hey, look, here's a 3-click game that will get you this one little piece of information? Or is that just an abuse of the technology?
Oh, no, not an abuse at all. I think it's absolutely, and that kind of speaks to what comes next for gamification. I think having those 30-second or 1-minute games that are tied into a broader, package, I guess, for lack of a better word, where you can sit and do something for 30 seconds or a minute, but then your score there goes into a leaderboard and an LXP, and then it serves up the next portion of the game when you're ready to jump in and do another 30-second, 1 minute, maybe even 2-minute sit down with it. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's addressing learners' attention span and their need to snack on learning, for lack of a better word. A bit of pun intended, snacking on chocolate.
Fantastic. Alex Ryan, you are the Chief Solution Strategist at Evolve Solution Strategies. We've had a lot of talk about tacos. Group. Sorry, Evolve Solutions. That's all right. I apologize, Evolve Solutions Group.
It's a mouthful. I get it.
I just wanted to say the word strategy again. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day at the lunch hour to talk about tacos. Now we're both super hungry.
Totally hungry.
I think it's time to go feast, but thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for listening to the eLearn podcast here from OpenLMS. I just wanted to ask one more time, if you enjoyed this show, if you learned something, if you were inspired, if you were challenged, if you feel like, this is something you can take into your practice, please do me a favor. And right now on your podcast player, hit subscribe. That way you're never going to miss a future episode. Also, come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe there as well, because we have tons of great information about how to create killer online learning outcomes. Thanks.